The Wall Breaker is my favourite type of Pokemon. They don't mess around or do any of this silly stuff, they're here to punch holes in other Pokemon, just dealing pure damage. But what sets the Kool-Aid Mans or David Hasselhoffs of the franchise away from other Pokemon? What is the anatomy of a Wall Breaker? This video is brought to you by the members of the Crustacean Association, Bill B, Finnegan Cleary and Aidan Tawney. Thank you for supporting the channel. The role of the Wall Breaker is pretty self-explanatory. They break walls. They're all about massive amounts of power that are just meant to overpower your opponent and just blow them out of the water. I like to think of Pokemon's three main archetypes as being a bit of a triangle. Wall Breakers with their amazing power are counters to walls. They're one of the few ways to get through them. Walls then provide a stop to sweepers. They don't have the power to break through them like a Wall Breaker does. But a sweeper is able to target a Wall Breaker. They're much faster, and generally Wall Breakers are a little bit frailer than walls. They play a major role in enabling the sweeper, getting rid of the specific threats and counters that they just can't deal with. They're like the Bomb Squad or the SAS. They go in, neutralize the threat, do all the hard work, and then the other guys take all the credit. If the sweepers are Indiana Jones, then the Wall Breakers are the Ark of the Covenant. They deal the real damage. But wait a second. Wouldn't that also make the walls... Wall Breakers live for the hunt. They just want to come in on a Pokemon who no one else can take out, and they just want to deal with it. Some of the best probably have Blisseys or Toxapexes mounted up on the wall. But what makes a good Wall Breaker? Well, number one is power. They need high amounts of power. For most Wall Breakers, it's just a numbers game. You want to deal as much damage as physically possible to the opponent, all at once. This means that you're going to have to use some of the most powerful moves in the game. Some of these have drawbacks, but a Wall Breaker needs it because they need that extra power boost. It's quite important though that they don't go too much into this. Rampardos is a famously bad Pokemon, even though it has some ridiculous power to it. This is because its other stats don't offer anything else to it. Yeah, it could punch a giant hole in your team, but when is it going to get the option to? You need to have a bit of well-roundedness. Maybe even more important than power is being able to match up against the good threats of the tier. Being a Wall Breaker is naturally reactionary, so it's important that you match up against what it is you're meant to be breaking through. Bad coverage or stats could just mean that you aren't able to break through the walls that you need to get rid of, and then you're not really useful as a Wall Breaker. Wall Breakers in Generation 1 are like most things in Generation 1. Incredibly weird. There aren't really many true walls in Generation 1. Every kind of Pokemon is a wall, but they're also kind of not a wall at the same time. Having a Wall Breaker would be a bit like having a wrecking ball in an open field. It's not going to be much fun, and there's very few things that are going to get smashed. A lot of this is down to the way that EVs worked, basically making every Pokemon good at everything. It meant that every Pokemon had a decent amount of bulk behind them, even if they were offensively minded, leading to a metagame which was just completely different from how modern Pokemon works. There are no real walls to break, and even if there are Pokemon who are more defensive than others, they're still going to be able to fight back a lot better than they will in later on generations because there's less min-maxing. You've also got the weird janky special stat going on, which means that any Pokemon that could be a special wall is also going to be a really powerful attacker. So being a Wall Breaker would just be really difficult in this scenario. Case in point, Chansey, who's also able to be really powerful on the attack. If there's anything close to being a wall, it's Rhyhorn or Golem. Their whole thing is that they specifically do not care about Hyper Beam, and they aren't really bothered about physical attacks. The problem with categorizing any Pokemon as being a Wall Breaker to these two is that kind of every Pokemon does this already. Pretty much every Pokemon uses an Ice move, partially to counter one of these two Pokemon. Generally Rhydon most of the time, but Golem sometimes. So you could kind of say that every Pokemon is a Wall Breaker to the two of them. When it comes to breaking through special walls, however, you have a very different scenario. Blowing up in Generation 1 is the best way to get through a special wall due to the buff that explosion moves have. They half your defense before hitting, so they're basically like nukes. It breaks the opponent and it breaks you. The game plan is basically to lure in a specially bulky Pokemon and then boom, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a sacrifice you're gonna have to make in Generation 1. This is an indescript animal eats coconut egg man world. That's just the nature of Generation 1's weird metagame. In Generation 2, we start to see the first true wall breakers as we would recognise. Despite this, it's still not a very good metagame to be a guy who just punches really hard. Number 1, you have leftovers. Everybody has leftovers. You know what else everybody has? Rest Talk. So many Pokemon are just long lasting in Generation 2 due to the combination of leftovers and Rest Talk. This more defensive metagame means that Curse is one of the best setup moves, and means that you're just going to have to deal with some ridiculously bulky Pokemon all of the time. Luckily for fans of Wall Breakers, however, Game Freak added in a nuclear option with the first real Wall Breaker, Marowak. Whilst every other Pokemon is mumbling in their sleep, Marowak is dancing around his sword, club thing, and making the ground shake. It's the hardest hitter in the game, with Fit Club doubling its attack, and it's meant to do one thing: punch holes in Snorlax. And being able to punch holes in Snorlax in Gen 2 is incredibly good. Snorlax is the best Pokemon by far, so being able to hit it hard is amazing. Whilst most games in the metagame are played with Curse Sweepers, Marowak is meant to be the opposite of that. It's just meant to do pure damage, blowing open teams for you to sweep with your own Curse Sweepers. Of course, it does struggle with some Pokemon. There are actual walls in this game, and one of them is Skarmory. Get ready for me to say Skarmory a lot, because no Pokemon has probably influenced Wall Breakers more than Skarmory has. It was such a good Pokemon for so long that basically every team needed to have a way to deal with Skarmory. I think Marowak is the only true Wall Breaker in Generation 2, considering how much the balance of power shifted towards not dealing massive amounts of damage straight away. But there were some other Pokemon who kind of do similar things. Machamp is like discount Marowak. It's not going to deal as much damage, but it does match up amazingly well against Snorlax, and it can be a Curse Sweeper of its own. Snorlax can basically do anything in Generation 2, so it's basically a Wall Breaker in its own right. It does have setup required for it, and it fills in every other role in the game, so it kind of leads me away from saying it's a Wall Breaker, but it could be if you wanted to. On the special side, you've got the two dominant electric types of the tier. If you didn't have one of these two guys on your team, your physical attackers would be completely walled. So I'd say that they would be kind of wall breakers in how they deal with the physical walls of the game. Oh, and don't forget, you can still explode in Generation 2. The advanced generation brought with it changes to EVs that made it so that archetypes would be much more defined. Now a wall wouldn't be as threatening and a sweeper wouldn't be as bulky. Walls are walls and sweepers are sweepers, which feels very much like something an uncle at a family gathering would say. This change brought in a new era of walls ready to be smashed through, and nobody was better at doing it than Metagross. Metagross is pure raw attacking power with Meteor Mash and Earthquake. It's a Pokemon that is meant to be powerful, and it had access to another amazing option for wall breakers, Choice Band. Choice Band made it so that for the first time, I would say wall breakers had a bit of an upper hand over walls. It gives absolute immediate attacking power on a ridiculous level. It's perfectly designed for what a wall breaker is meant to do. You've also got Salamence up there with the best. It's very similar to how Metagross plays, but it has much more variety. It can be a mixed attacker or go all out offensive with the Choice Band. The idea alone of it being a mixed attacker is incredibly powerful, as it means that you'll always have that idea that when you switch your Skarmory into it, you might be coming in on a Fire Blast rather than an Earthquake. This is really similar to what Tyranitar can do. It's a really powerful physical attacker, but is also able to deal with Skarmory via Fire Blast. It's kind of also the case that it can pretty much do anything in this format, very similar to Generation 2 Snorlax. It's the definitive king of the game. Generation 3 also introduced abilities into the game. I didn't talk about Salamancers, but it has one of the best in the game with Intimidate. Not very relevant for a wall breaker, but you're never going to turn down Intimidate, are you? Guts now made Heracross one of the best wall breakers, with it just being able to deal huge amounts of damage once you set it on fire. Very few Pokemon want to switch into Guts boosted Heracross. You also have Dugtrio, who goes from utterly useless to being one of the most important Pokemon in the metagame with just one small change: a slight slant. What makes Dugtrio so good is that it's unavoidable. Most other types you have an option to switch out, but Dugtrio ensures that they will break a wall if you don't play correctly. It also matches up really well against Tyranitar, which is really important in Generation 3. Another Pokemon who deals with Tyranitar is Medicham, who, if you can get the prediction right, can absolutely marmalize any Pokemon with a Focus Punch. Choice Band truly opened up the idea of the Wall Breaker, with it just giving immediate attacking power on a level which is unmatched across any other item. Generation 4 completely blows the game open for wall breakers. For one, you have the introduction of the Choice Specs, which evens it up for special attackers to be able to deal the amount of damage that physical attackers could in Generation 3. You've also got the introduction of rocks bringing hazards to the forefront of the metagame. I know that hazards existed in the previous 2 generations, but with Stealth Rocks, they become an absolute requirement on every team. Hazards are great for wall breakers as they don't need to deal as much damage, meaning that more and more Pokemon are able to be wall breakers, something that leads towards a trend towards mixed attackers, which is only helped by the physical special split, giving even better coverage to these Pokemon. Salamence continued its streak on from Generation 3, but now it had an actual powerful dragon move in Draco Meteor. It was so good as a mixed attacker or choice bander that it actually got banned. But even then, Dragonite just took its place, doing the exact same thing. The development of Infernape was also key. Its status as one of the few wall breakers who could deal stab super effective damage to both Skarmory and Blissey made it one of the best wall breakers in the game. These two are so important in early generations that being able to hit both of them is practically unheard of. The combination of Close Combat and Overheat will take out either of these, and with the newly added Life Orb and Expert Belts allowing for more variety within the Pokemon, it just became one of the most important Pokemon. There were even a few more non-traditional wall breakers. Focus Punch Breloom is able to deal massive amounts of damage on switch-ins, and it's one of the few viable users of the move because of its use of Spore. With the addition of the Toxic Orb, it's now able to stay around much longer. Or you've got a Pokemon like Heatran who emerged as the #1 trapper of the game. It's more of a stall breaker with its ability to trap in a wall and kind of wear it down, but it also has the option to explode. I'm going to put the next half of the generations in a different video, so if you've enjoyed it, please look out for that in the future. I hope I've earned a like or a subscribe from you, and thank you.